Hi everybody, and welcome to Traveling with Russell, and welcome to Moscow. Welcome to a new video. Welcome to a bike festival. Now, I don't have a bike, however, I can show you a lot of other people with bikes, and I think it might be interesting to walk through this festival they've got set up and show you what happens on a cloudy Saturday here in Moscow. I'm not too sure how this video is going to turn out, and I'm actually here by the finish line, so all of the cyclists that have just completed the lap around Moscow are coming in and getting their finishers medals. Now, they did have different categories of people riding, and throughout the day they've got all sorts of different people riding bikes around the center of Moscow. So you'll see here the volunteers giving the finishing medals, which is super nice to see. And there is literally thousands of people here at this finish line, and actually the start line's at the other end of the road. Now, what's a little bit hard to give you perspective of is the fact that the entire center of Moscow is closed, and it's only allowed for cyclists, and it's been closed since very early this morning until the afternoon. And there is thousands of people who set off earlier this morning around what's called the Garden Ring. Now, a few people are pushing their bikes to the finish. I think maybe by now they're maybe a little bit tired, and also everyone's sort of slowing down from the walk up to the finish line. So it's really very cool to see at least a few of the riders finishing. The actual lap that they've done around the Garden Ring was 16 kilometers. So from early this morning until now, there is people still completing the full circuit around the actual ring itself. And then later on, once a lot of the riders that are finishing now complete the lap, it's open to casual riders, and anybody with a bicycle basically can do the finishing loop. So we'll walk down, I think, the main finishing straight and see if we can catch a little bit of a feeling about how many people are here at this festival of bikes here in Moscow. So right here by the finish line, or the medal presentation section, there is of course quite a lot of people in full bike gear, and they have some very impressive bikes. And there's also quite a lot of people that are riding in corporate teams as well as just individually, and a lot of people riding in groups. And I think I probably didn't realize the extent of bicycle riding here in Moscow until I came down here to check it out and to see some riders, good job, coming to do this loop around the Garden Ring. Now, any normal day of the week, it is very difficult to impossible to ride a bike in the center of Moscow, particularly on the streets. Now, there is a lot of parks, there is a lot of cycling lanes set up, but to be able to ride the 16-kilometer loop of Moscow is something that happens only one day per year. The actual location where I am is a place called Leo Tolstoy Park. I think that's the actual name of it. However, there is a monument and sculpture to him right here, one of the very famous writers in Russia. Also some very beautiful flowers. And the whole reference to the Garden Ring is there is a walkable path around the entire loop of Moscow, and it's broken up into lots of individual parks, and it's a super nice walk to do. Now, perhaps not the entire 16 kilometers, although it's very possible. At least a segment of it for a few hours on a weekend is something really nice to do in Moscow. Actually, today my plan was to go and see some of the metro trains. Yesterday technically was the 90th anniversary of the opening of the Moscow Metro, and all over the center there is different advertising and banners. There's actually a pretty cool sign right here, so I am going to try to get there today or tomorrow, so whenever you're watching this video you can perhaps check that out at some point. And they've got some of the older metro trams or carriages on a couple of the stations where you can go visit them and get up close with them. Of course, the modern ones, we can ride them every day of the week. Beyond seeing all the cyclists, there is actually a little bit of a... As I walk around, I want to point out a few things that are quite interesting. And they've actually got some food stations set up, and these ladies are handing out apples that are from Lipetsk, a region of Russia. So you can actually grab yourself a snack. Much nicer idea rather than giving out sodas and chocolates. You can get yourself an apple as you're going for your ride, or even if you're coming as a spectator. So I am trying to understand more about what the event entails today as I'm walking around. And in the morning there was the ride for people that signed up as part of the event, basically like a professional, semi-professional race. And then in the afternoon is the casual free riders, if that makes sense, or anybody with a bike basically. And there's different booths set up along the road here, which I just want to point out a couple of them at least. This is the main road of the Garden Ring, or one segment of it, and it's really mad to see it closed off and to be able to walk down the middle of the street. And this particular stand is from the local administration about jobs via the local government. So it's sort of like a job fair at a bicycle fair, if that makes sense. So you can actually find out information about getting jobs within the local government. Now, some of this doesn't start up for another hour or so, so they're still building part of it, because this is more the public side of the whole event. Where I started the video was where the riders start and end the racing part of it. The actual event itself becomes a little bit of a branding opportunity for some of the sponsors of this event. And this is a setup for Dixie, which is a supermarket here in Moscow. And they've actually set up a coffee station where you can get yourself a drink and an apple. And I'm fairly sure you can actually also get yourself a t-shirt or a bag or something like that. So a very good branding opportunity on behalf of all the different companies. Now, Dixie is a very well-known supermarket chain in Russia. They're very large, so most people would know this shop. So nothing like a little bit of brand reference when you're coming to an event like this. Now, it's not a particularly hot day today in Moscow, but they still have stations set up giving out free water, which is really nice. This is very normal at any large event in Moscow that you come to, whether it's some kind of a festival or a parade or anniversary. And then they hand out the bottles of water. I think also a newspaper with some information about the event as well. But so nice. It seems really strange to walk down the middle of the Garden Ring and no cars. It's so quiet, so peaceful. And just the logistics of closing down the center of Moscow when you think about it. Now, just recently they had the Victory Day parade in Moscow, so they're very used to doing large-scale events here and closing down entire streets and roads. But to do it just for cyclists, I don't mean that negatively, of course, but the local administration here in Moscow really does events for everybody. And just recently they had the motorbike parade, which was quite similarly where they closed down the main street or this main garden ring route, and all of the motorbike riders could come and do the lap around. And then now, for cyclists, just the amount of security that are here, and police and local authorities, to be able to close off every side street, every laneway is just staggering. Here's something interesting for anyone that doesn't have a bike and wants to be part of the event. Now, I'm not going to be riding one. They have bike sharing here in Russia, and I think they have this around the world, very similar to where they've got the scooters. But this is the bicycle version, so you can scan the QR code, download an app, and you can go for a ride on a bike and do the lap around the ring. And so this is pretty neat. So this is actually a company that's got bikes all over Moscow, not just today. And I think they probably brought a few thousand of their bikes here, especially for today. And people will be able to literally rent them. Now, if you want to rent it for 4 hours, it's around about $6 is the price. You can actually rent them by the minute. Normally for bikes, it's by the hour, because it's a little bit different to scooters. But how many are there here? There's a lot. One thing that's interesting, and I was explaining to the staff here, in Australia, it's law, we have to wear a helmet. And in Russia, they tried to implement it, but it wasn't as successful as they like. Of course, it's the right thing to do. But check out how many bikes they've got ready for the casual riders this afternoon. So there's actually a little bit of the road that's closed off, as they're going to open it to the casual riders in about 20 minutes or so. So lots of people have gathered here, and it's a good chance to come for a walk down. And this is everybody with the everyday bikes, and then have a look back up at the garden ring, the empty road that's ready for everybody. It's so strange to see it empty, and then to see literally thousands of people on bikes. You're going to be able to ride up here in a few minutes' time. It's probably a little bit hard to get an idea of how many people are here. They've actually opened up the main street now to let everybody come down to the different start points for the casual afternoon ride in Moscow. And there is literally thousands upon thousands of people that are here. It's really hard to get an idea now. They are playing very loud music. Hello. And it is so difficult to try to get close without getting caught up and in the way. But there is really a lot of people. It goes the entire way down the street where I walked earlier, and then as far as we can see in this direction. Okay, so very good timing. They've switched off the music because it's just deafening. Very typical Moscow to play music 12 times the volume it's really necessary. But you can see now back down the garden ring how many people are here. They estimate around about 60,000 people have come to the event. 60,000! And of course, the weather's not amazing. It was earlier, but it's become a little bit cloudy now. But I think, hopefully, if you can look back up the streets, we can get a good view of just how many people. It literally went as far as you can see. And this is a perfect timing. The reason why they've switched the music off is because they've got a press conference going on, and they need to get the volume right because it's just way too loud. However, in around about 5 minutes, they're going to start the riding. This part of the event is not a race, although people are trying to get to the front as quick as they can. So, yeah, check that out, looking down the street there. And then This is how they do social media in Russia. People with just cameras and phones, and they're interviewing, I think, somebody fairly official. Maybe he's the Minister of Bicycles. I'm not too sure what he officially does. Let's go and see. Okay, he's asking and answering a few questions. And everybody from the media here. Let's say that he's perhaps the Minister of Bicycles. Anybody knows otherwise? So there's about 6 minutes till the start. And what I understand is they're letting people go in groups. However, people are literally on the side streets and down the lanes. It would really be awkward if you lived in that apartment building today and wanted to go to the local supermarket. Good luck. So interesting how just for a press conference they switched off all the music. Everybody's gone super quiet and everybody's preparing for the 16-kilometer loop around Moscow. The streets of Moscow become only accessible to bicycles just for a few hours. So the actual start of the wave of everyday cyclists are going down now. Really for about the first 10 or 15 minutes, a lot of people will be just walking because of the amount of people. And I was told in previous years it was just one group and it went for kilometers down the street, and now they've broken it up into different start times because, as they said, the Garden Ring Road is wide enough, but it would create an incredibly long line of cyclists. Now, one thing that I do ask, and I'm curious in comments about wearing bicycle helmets. Now, you'll probably see here there is a lot of people without bicycle helmets, and in Australia it is actually law that you have to wear a helmet, and if not, the police can fine you on the spot for not wearing one. And here in Russia, as I talked about when I showed the rental bikes, there is no rule about it. They tried to implement it, but it just was too difficult because of the sheer amount of people, and it's going and going and going. And what's really nice to see is the fact that there is people of all ages. It's not one, let's say, middle demographic of cyclists. There is people of all ages. Once a few people get going and the start line clears, then it'll be a little bit better. Have a look at these steel bicycles, or they're called steelies. If anybody has one of those or has ridden one before, they really need to see. There's also a one wheel, I think it's a one gear bike. This guy's a little bit game without his shirt on, but I guess he's okay with the weather. Check it out. They said 60,000 people. That's the estimated crowd. And what the gentleman said to me, I was chatting to somebody about this, and he said that every year there is more and more, and it's very difficult to actually get a number of how many people are actually here because it's just so many people. So it's just amazing to see. So you can imagine there's that many people still, that people are pushing their bikes just because the people can't get up to speed. And it's a 16-kilometer circuit. I've never actually done the entire walk myself. I've done quite a few segments of it, but not one loop on a single day. Nice. Have a look. Double gold medalist. They were the finishing medals for the racing earlier. There is quite a few people dressed up. I was just going to say here there is one guy with an electric bike, I think, and he's just having a lot of fun. I think that's really the thing today. And perhaps try and get on the local Moscow news. Some pirates going by. Huh? Really cool. I hope this is an interesting video and it's not too much of a problem with the volume of the speakers. There was always the fear that it was going to be too loud. That's very normal. That's a lot of people going through. Check that out. There is every possible model of bike. I need to do a video at one of the bike shops in Moscow. I know I've said it before, but there is a couple of very, very nice bike shops that you can actually visit. And obviously, based on the amount of people here and the amount of bikes that you see, there's a very big demand for bikes. Now, of course, it's very seasonal. Here is some of the rental bikes you see going by. Hello. So really neat. I've come a little bit further down the street now, and I was trying to get away from music and the speakers because it's just deafening back there at the start point. And I think from here, as I look down the street, it gives you a good perspective of how many people. Now, from when I filmed the previous clip, when it started, this is now 40 minutes later. People are still coming through and down the main road here, and it's just, I don't know what to say. I mean, I guess I come from a smaller city which just wouldn't have this much participation in events, and just the sheer number of people and different bikes and different characters as I've been walking around. I'm not sure who's going to clean up all this confetti. They've actually got a guy up on the stand over there spraying out bubbles and confetti, and it's gone everywhere. But Moscow has incredible cleanliness, so literally a few hours they'll have it tidied up. People are still coming. It's like when I watch the starts of marathons and where they show just the sheer amount of people down the road, and it just is incredible. And I think slowly now people are able to get on their bikes and actually ride. It's spaced out a little bit, and again more music is coming on, but it's okay. There's a lot of people. Perhaps from this angle you can get a bit of an idea now, everybody a bit more spread out, and just how wide this road is and the sheer amount of people that are on this cycling festival route. And it's just really cool to be able to practically stand in the middle of the road. And they've got some buses blocking off one of the entrances to a side street here, which is just the easiest way to do it in Russia. When it was the Victory Day parade, they just got some of the administration vehicles, and for this they've just put public buses. They pretty much can't do too much riding around the center anyway today because so much of it is blocked off, and just even being able to cross the street is difficult. Now, it's understood that you can just do one lap and finish, or you can actually do 2 laps if you're fast enough. And people are just very casually riding around. Moscow is known not to be very hilly, so it's a very easy ride around the entire garden ring. Wow. I know I keep saying it, but for anyone that's been to Moscow before and you realize the road system and the roads that go in and out of Moscow, and then there's a couple of different circular main roads, it's just so interesting to see what they can do in Moscow when the government decide to hold events for the general public. And this really is for anybody to attend. The morning events when I first got here were focused on a race and a corporate race, and now it's for the absolute general public. And there is also points where you can stop and you don't have to ride the whole loop, so you can do as much or as little as you like. Look at this with the tires. It's really fascinating to see the types of bikes and how people are dressed and enjoying the day. I think for most people this might be their first cycle for the season. I was told there's actually 4 different events that they do this year, so there is a couple of other times I can come and check this out. So I've walked up a little bit further and there's actually a fork in the road now, so people have to decide, do they want to keep riding one more lap? And I think this gentleman's celebrating the loop around Moscow, and a lot of people now have to either pull off the course or decide to keep going. And how is that view? Now, it's not great if you live in any of these nearby apartments, but for the sake of the road being closed and people riding around, it's really not a problem. It's so fun, and really, I'm so glad I came, and I hope it's an interesting video. Do they close off the entire city for everyone to ride their bikes where you live? And I think I've asked it before, but I'm asking again. I'm trying to get to a point here where I'm in the middle of the road, however, naturally the bikes won't ride towards us. I've come back to one of the original places where I started the video, and there's actually still people starting their loop around Moscow, and this is now nearly 3 hours later. So I think a lot of people perhaps learn maybe from previous years not to come early and not try to be part of the big crowd at the very beginning. And a lot of people that are here now have actually done their lap and come back to this start and finish line at the area where I am. And it's really interesting that there's still people heading off on their first lap. And I even managed to get a banana. They were giving out apples before, tea, snacks, all sorts of different things. There's actually a stand over here giving out batteries, which I'm not really sure where that reference is with the batteries, but I'm happy to get a banana. And this is all part of these events, especially when you come to the bigger ones where there's large crowds involved. There is a lot of things organized, the amount of people that would come to these events, even things like temporary bathrooms, water stations. There's even a bike cleaning station, which I think a lot of people probably took their bike out of their storage for the first time today. So to get it cleaned and washed down. There's another place here where you can get your bike looked at and the tires pumped up as well. So I hope this was an interesting video, and the amount of people that we've seen and the different walks of life that come to these events, from the very serious people at the start of the video to now the more relaxed, laid-back people at the end. And there's even a few different food stands as well. And there's enough snacks being given away. I'm not sure if I need a hot dog as well. Okay everybody, so I've come to the end of the video. I'm not actually sure which way I can walk to get to the metro to head off to my next activity or my next adventure, because I was looking on the map just a few minutes ago and everywhere is closed down and a lot of this areas are barricaded off as well. It's really just more for the safety of pedestrians because there is bikes all over the place. And of course, if I choose to walk on the road where the bikes are, it's going to be a little bit more busier. So I hope this was an interesting video. If it was, give it a thumbs up, or maybe in the comments, put the word banana. So if I know you've got to the end of the video and somehow fit it into a sentence to confuse everybody who didn't watch the last minute or two of the video, and where they're going to be reading the word banana in the comments, it'll be interesting. If you want to follow my daily activities on Telegram, the link is right here. And then if you want to watch an old video on the channel, one will pop up right now. And you can keep traveling with Russell. Okay everybody, I'm off on another adventure. Bye.